Hello and welcome to the second part of representation and looking at analysing images. Now what we're going to look at in this particular set of slides is we're going to look at the main groupings of visual techniques and just go through them very basically and very broadly, what they are and what they do. Okay, so to start with, we're going to look at a couple of groups of visual techniques. The first one being positional, as you can see up there. Now what positional groupings are ones that refer to how an image is laid out and how the image and the text on that particular poster, artwork, whatever it is, has been set out. So looking at how things are put into a particular order in a particular place, just the same as if you look at this image to the left of me here, then one of the things that you'll see is you'll see that the layout of this image is quite unique in that we've got a very strong feature at the beginning, we've got the lady standing out, we've got everything sort of centered, we've got some things cut out of things not on stage, we've got the most important things covered. And so the layout of this particular image is quite important. The other thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at style or technique. So the way that the image basically has been put together. So the ways that you can describe those scenes and the way that they have been composed, they've been drawn, everything about how they've been laid out. So this is what we're going to mainly be looking at when we're looking at those two different groups. So to start with, we're going to look at positional in a little bit more detail. Okay, so as I mentioned before, they describe where everything is. So from the beginning to the end, just like in this image here, you see the position of different lines means that we've got a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. That's what the first thing we're going to look at. We're going to look at layers. So the layering of an image is quite important because we have something that stands out, the thing in the foreground. We have middle ground, which is things of somewhat of a lesser importance, and then you've got the background, which is just the backing. But sometimes, depending on the type of image, you might find that the middle ground or the background can sometimes have a little bit more importance than what they would generally do. So to be able to discuss those techniques is quite important. The next thing is to look at quadrants. Now, if you're looking at a quadrant, just imagine that this image here is broken up into 4 squares, and you've got a top corner of both left and right, and then you've got a bottom left and right corner. Now, when you break them up into those quadrants, you're able to just break up the image basically into 4 parts, but not only that, you're able to discuss how an image focuses on one quadrant or another. Now most images will focus on the middle. However, if you're using quadrants, you'll be able to place importance on other aspects of the image and other parts of the image as well. So not only will you be able to say where exactly in the image it is, you'll be able to refer to something more technical, which is your quadrant. Next thing we'll look at is the frame. So particularly this is in terms of photos and film. As in what has been cut out of that frame is actually sometimes quite important. Why have we focused on, for instance, a headshot from the neck up or to the waist up? Why have we cut out certain things? Why are we focusing on one person's feet? Why are we not? Why is this particular image being framed this way? So framing is quite important and shows where the edge of the paper would be. So when you draw something, you've got edges and paper already in mind. So framing is not quite as important. However, when you're photographing something, you've got a big wide panoramic view of all these things you could be photographing. So why have you focused on that particular thing? Next thing is focus. So what your center of attention is. So the thing that stands out the most. So the thing you look at straight away, usually in a person, is their face. You look right smack bang in the middle of it. But also, if you're looking at an image, there might be something else which stands out immediately in it. And the image is trying to get you to focus on that one thing. Usually it's the most important part of it. The next thing is the vector. Now this focuses a little bit more on that point I was mentioning before about focus. In that you start with the focus, the main thing that catches your eye, and then your vectors are your lines which draw away from that. So things which lead you on to other parts of the image. So you start at the central point and then you trace a line between where your eyes go and then when they go afterwards. So like you're drawing a little bit of a map around your image. Right. Now the other thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at style and technique terms. Alright, now these are ones which just refer to how the image has been put together. Now there's a whole heap of these. So it might be a good idea to check the guide or check the internet for a full list of different visual arts and visual technique terms. Alright, because the main thing is that you'll find a whole lot of them. And it's very important then to be able to choose which ones are the most important for analysing a particular type of image, because they're not all going to apply. So the first one we're going to look at is composition. So how the image has been put together. Now composition is a technical term to say that something has been painted, something has been drawn, something has been photographed, something has been filmed, whatever it is. And it's a very useful one to have, particularly when you're dealing with lots of different kinds of images. The next one we're going to look at is proportion, as in the size of something compared to other parts of the image. So if you've got something that's bigger than the rest, then the question is, why has that been made bigger? Why isn't it just kept in normal proportions? The next one would be icons and symbols. So the use of various items or graphics. So if it's a company, then usually they'll have their own personal icon or graphic on there. If it is something else and it's got this image or this graphic that's been used for some unknown reason, then maybe that's something that you can investigate, is why this particular icon or graphic has been used. The next thing is color and tone. So the color schemes, which are quite important, in that the way that something's been colored or the way that something has been illustrated is usually given some sort of importance. And artists choose a long time picking the color schemes that are used. So it's not just a case of they paint a picture and go, well, that looks pretty in green. Unless they're choosing something particularly realistic and they have paid very little attention to their color scheme, colors still have some sort of importance. And even in images where colors are as they should be, there may be some things where a particular color is more dominant than others, and that means something. So it's something to discuss and analyze. Now, as an example of a image, or a poster in this case, we're going to look at the film Jaws, and we're going to look at the poster, the iconic poster for this film, because it is a brilliant example of how visual techniques and language are used. Now we're also going to look at the positional and the stylistic techniques, and we're going to give a bit of a basic analysis of this as well. So we're going to focus on those three parts: positioning, the stylistic techniques, and also a bit of an analysis about it. So first of all, let's start with the positional. Now, if we were to look at this image, and I've just drawn a couple of lines on this for you. So first of all, the cross lines that we've got there, we've got the ones in the middle and we've got the ones down vertically. That makes up your quadrants. So it might not be very clear to see on this image, but the image has been cut out a little bit. So you've got there, one of the things is you've got a black background and then you've got a picture in the middle. But if you're looking at the center point of the image, you've got the nose of the shark. Now that's quite important to it, because it is, first of all, the foreground is the thing that we're looking at. So the first thing that a moviegoer or someone who is interested in seeing a movie tonight, now this was released in 1976, so this was a while ago, but if someone is looking for a movie poster, they immediately go straight to the shark and go, it's a shark movie. Now, the nature of the nose is actually quite important as well, because not only is this part of a quadrant, however, it is also part of a vector. So the vector is a technique which is used in this to point up to the title. So if we're looking at this in quadrants again, then one of the things that we see is that the image of the shark occupies most of the bottom, as well as information about the actors in the film. But in the top part, we've got nothing but basically the title. Yes, we've got the swimmer there as well. That's more of a stylistic feature. But then we've also got the terrifying motion picture from the terrifying #1 bestseller. So it's immediately pointing straight up to, this is an image which is about a film which is called Jaws. Now that might seem very obvious when I say it like that, but it's pretty much what you're doing, is you're looking at how this image as a whole stands out as a film poster. And particularly this one does, because of the fact that it is so elegant and so simple. Now, if we're looking at the style of this, okay, now this style is a little bit different from how movie posters are composed now, because most of the ones that are composed now are digital, whereas this one was a painted artwork, which would have been then put onto a poster. So immediately we've got the poster being painted, which adds a little bit of depth to the various kinds of techniques which are used. Alright, so first of all, the text at the top is one of the more dominant features after the shark. It's bold, it stands out, it's blood red. So immediately we've got this strong wording at the top, and then behind it, the rest of the image is fairly light colour scheme. There's not really a whole heap of bold colours in there, apart from maybe the mouth of the shark. The rest of it's fairly light and sort of blends in the background a little bit. The shark is the largest proportionate image. So in terms of proportions, obviously the shark in the movie is a little bit out of proportion. However, the girl isn't exactly made to look big either. So the swimmer at the top has been, like in the film, dramatized to be a little bit smaller. So that perspective is looking at the fact that, well, it's a film about a giant shark, yes, but it's also helping to set up a little bit of an idea of fear, which we'll go into a little bit in a second. Now, the lines and shapes also match the medium of the composition. What I mean by that is that the way that it's been painted and the way that the artwork has been drawn and coloured is indicative and very similar to how a lot of paintings use very soft lines. It's more of a pastel kind of work. So there are lots of different features which are representative of just that kind of painting. And it's quite realistic. It's not an abstract one. It's not one of the ones that looks a little bit odd and weird. It's painted in a fairly realistic style. Okay, so let's have a look at a quick analysis of this film. Now, the poster, should I say. We're not looking at the film, we're looking at the poster. Alright, first of all, there's a bit of a contrast between the shark and the small person, as mentioned before, and that's immediately creating a sense of fear. It makes people afraid to, as the tagline of the movie goes, go into the water. And it helps to create a little bit of, as I said, fear, and creates this sensation that the film is a bit of a thriller. And also tells a lot of the story, really. It's a film about a giant shark, what's not to get? Next thing is, there's a dominant feature of the shark playing on people's fears as well. So not only do we have the image of the shark and the human, but we also have the fact that the shark is huge. It's not a tiny thing, it's huge. It's almost exaggerated. Even the shark as it's portrayed in the film is almost exaggerated to be massive. Next thing is, we've got this blood red text at the top. So Jaws hasn't been written in black or yellow or any other colour, it's been done in red. So it's linked with that idea immediately of blood and death, that people are going to die in this film, and that this shark is going to get its way for a fair while. Next thing as well is that the shark is pointing up, which means that from the way that it's being put together, from that vector which is pointing straight up, we're going straight from, immediately when I first look at this poster I see a shark, the shark is pointing up, I look at the girl, but more importantly I'm looking at the title of the film, the thing I'm going to go and see. So, what makes this a good poster? What makes it so iconic? Well, first of all, as I said before, it's very simple. It's only really the title and the shark that are dominating. It's not one of these posters which has 1,000 things on it and I don't know where I'm supposed to be looking at first. Because immediately we look at people having very short attention spans. And if someone's got a very short attention span, they're not going to be looking at something unless it's something that really appeals to them for very long. So if you've got shark, movie about shark, very, very simple straight up. It's creating emotion. Immediately, its poster is creating fear. It's making people think of the times that they go into the ocean, have a swim, and fear a shark coming out and biting them. So it immediately plays on people's emotions and particularly people's paranoias about sharks and shark attacks. And the next bit is the layout. So as I mentioned before, not only is it a very simple layout, it's basically screaming out, it's a film, go and see me. So it's not something that has created this immense amount of imagery or themes or ideas. It's being very simple. And through those very simple techniques, it is very, very effective. So that's something that you will discuss if you were to discuss this kind of poster. And you will be discussing things like movie posters as you go along and do this unit. So for now, that's the end of this lesson. So if you have any questions, don't forget, ask a teacher or go back over the video again and see if there's anything else you might have missed. But until next time, we'll see you later.